Welcome back to Buckeye Talk Prop Bets of the Week. Doug Lesmerises, Nathan Baird, Stephen Means. We're talking about Ohio State, Penn State noon kickoff on Saturday in Beaver Stadium. All three of us will be there. We're getting inside the game, Nathan. Little player action, I think this guy's going to do this, or this team's going to stop this guy from doing that. What do you have for the Nittany Lions and the Buckeyes?
So obviously Ohio State's coming off of its worst rushing performance of the year, worst rushing performance in a couple years, actually. But there was not a lot of evidence that the trouble running the ball against Iowa was the fault of Marvin Henderson. You could see him, or especially early in the game, I thought he made some good reads and some hesitation cutbacks in crowded spaces. Pro Football Focus actually gave him one of its highest grades for him this season, despite what was overall an underwhelming rushing performance. And there were some linemen who didn't get an especially good grade this week. And so last season, he showed he could grind out big rushing days when needed. And that included a 152-yard performance against Penn State, actually. And he's a guy who, because the reps have been a little bit limited this year, I think he's coming into this game pretty rested, pretty fresh at least. He's also due for a big one. He's only had one run over 26 yards this season. That's the thing that's been missing the most is some of those explosive plays. It just a lot of things are building here. And I think even with Mayan Williams likely taking away some carries, I like Henderson to go over the 84.5 that's set for his rushing total for this game.
I'm very nervous about that. I am very curious. This is an interesting matchup, Nathan. The idea of like how Ohio State decides to go about trying to attack Penn State and how Penn State, I'm fascinated by it. I don't have a handle on it. So I'm very, what led you down the road of like just seeing some kind of big rushing performance in this for Ohio State? Is it primarily sort of from what you said that you think they just want to try to establish that?
Well, first of all, I mean, 84.5 doesn't have to be a huge rushing performance. That's, 20 carries at 5 yards gets you well over that. And that seems well within his, ability. But also, there are a couple of factors. Number one is just how good Penn State is in the secondary. And I think coming off of last week's game, I think Ohio State just might be wanting to establish the run in a game like this, show that it can do that, show that it responded to last week's issues against Iowa and get some momentum going back with that running game. But we've seen other times too, where when opponents are so focused on taking away the pass from Ohio State, what that opens up for the run game. And I think Iowa was just tougher up front than Penn State is going to be. And Ohio State's going to have those yards on the ground where maybe they weren't there last week.
Okay. So we're going over on the trivia on Henderson. Rushing total. Steven, what do you have for prop bet this week?
Yeah, so the over under on touchdown catches this week for Marvin Harrison Jr. is 0.5, which is when you first see it, it's kind of crazy for a guy who's got 10 touchdown catches in 7 games. He's just what he's been doing. But then you realize, oh yeah, it's because Kalen King and Joey Porter Jr. are pretty good in coverage. And according to PFF, neither one of them has given me up a touchdown in man coverage yet. And I'm going to say that's going to come to an end on Saturday with Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm going to take the over there. I think this is an opportunity for Marvin Harrison for us to find out how good is he really, because I think obviously he's proven that he's a pretty good wide receiver at this point, but this is the first real challenge for him. But it shouldn't be much of a problem for him. If CJ Stroud even throws one touchdown pass like he did last year against Penn State, I would be comfortable putting my Buckeye Talk tokens on it being the Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah, Marvin Harrison touchdowns is kind of a Stephen Means specialty this year. So that, you could see last week, Stephen, the Riley Moss, Marvin Harrison Jr. matchup that we saw a lot. But when they got down to the red zone, Marvin just little inside move, little outside move. Yep. Riley Moss did everything he could, and still CJ finds him in the corner of the end zone. And you can just see how that almost works against everybody if they decide to do that. And why wouldn't they?
He's too much of a mismatch, just because of that size and athleticism. But then also, as Kevin Wilson was explaining, he's got little legs and a long arm. He's just got a weird body type that works out for him, especially in the red zone.
I thought that was a fascinating thing this week. Kevin Wilson explaining the long torsoed Marvin Harrison Jr. And we're going to get a tape measure and we're going to measure Marvin Harrison Jr.'s legs. Yep. And we'll find out, wow, you have 26-inch legs and yet you're 6'4". This is crazy. I'm going to do a double dip here, and this isn't exactly right, but I'm kind of going with the second receivers for both teams. Parker Washington's the top guy for Penn State. Emeka Egbuka is Ohio State's leading receiver, but I just feel like Marvin Harrison Jr., with all his touchdowns, what a difficult matchup he is. We think maybe he'll wind up with Joey Porter Jr. a lot. I'm going to wind up with over yards for both these guys. Mitchell Tinsley for Penn State and Emeka Egbuka for Ohio State. Egbuka, it's 74.5. I'll go over on that. And just double checking that, Nathan, and sometimes I like to use past things as a reference point. He's gone over 74.5 yards in every game except Rutgers. Like, I don't like, it's like, oh, it's like, well, it's like he gets 100 receiving yards practically every game. So like, I believe in this, and I think I could be very nervous about it with 10 minutes left in the game. And then it's like, oh, no, wait, now here's a drive where Egbuka had 3 catches for 50 yards, and now he's over 74.5. So I believe in that. And then I like the Penn State receiving core. I think they have multiple guys. Tinsley, as a transfer from Western Kentucky, 48.5. He's done that, I think, in all the games but 3 this year. One was a blowout, one was a monsoon against Northwestern. So more often than not, in a normal course of a game. And I just think, I don't know that the Ohio State corners are going to shut down the Penn State receivers. I think that's where Penn State had a little chance to make some money. They have some good tight ends. They'll use 2 and 3 tight ends. I think Ohio State can handle that. I think there's going to be some opportunities on the outside that Sean Clifford, he is not a dynamic quarterback throwing the ball, but I think he'll just kind of throw it up there and give his guys a shot. And I think Tinsley can take advantage of that. So I'm going to take both those overs on not the Egbuka's really a number 2 receiver, but maybe the 2 guys not quite in the limelight compared to the top receivers for each team. We will be at Beaver Stadium. We hope you are there with us, listening to Buckeye Talk, watching our videos on our cleveland.com Ohio State YouTube channel, trying to text at 614-350-3315. For Nathan, for Steve, I'm Doug. And those are our prop bet predictions here on Buckeye Talk.